Hey, I'm Dominic Goodman, and you are watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I am so happy to be joined by Dominic Goodman. How's it going?
I'm doing great. The show is out. People are enjoying it, so I'm happy.
And it's climbing the charts on Netflix as well. So
It
very
is.
exciting news for all of you.
We are very close to number one, so hopefully by the time you're watching this, we have snatched the number one spot.
I know it's always like, come on, watch it today, binge watch it again. I think it's worth many, many watches. Like there's always different things to pick up on.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we will get into the show in just a moment, but I wanted to start off with your background in the arts. What can you share about that and what sparked that passion in you?
Yeah, I mean, for as long as I can remember, I've been watching Will Smith movies since I was a kid. And that was really the thing that got me interested in acting. I used to watch Wild Wild West over and over, and I had the little cowboy hat and the glasses, and I would just repeat lines back at the screen. And then around my 12th birthday, I asked for acting classes from my parents in San Francisco, and it kind of just took off from there, theater classes here and there, and eventually going full time into acting.
I mean, aside from acting, the arts, you said theater, you have an improv background, you also were quite into athletics. So was that
Yeah.
always a route that you could have taken as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been an athlete since I was in like fifth grade. Like I used to run track and field, and then I played football and did basketball, some mixed martial arts, some backflips and stuff. And I did attempt to try to walk on in college for track and field, but it was a different beast. Like I was good, but this is like these dudes are like 6'5" and their legs are like the size of my whole body. So that was just like, all right, cool. Going back to acting, that's not an option.
You were
But
like, it's not
now,
happening.
yeah, but it's cool though, because now I'm able to get all these physical roles and put a lot of it into the job now. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely benefits you with stunts, I'm sure, like the whole conditioning aspect. You mentioned Will Smith, like you are an Afro Latino actor. So, how have you been influenced and inspired by your mixed race heritage and the artists that came before
Yeah.
you in the film community?
I mean, I think having people that you could look up to is very important. Like, I think the reason why I connected with Wild Wild West so much was I hadn't really seen any black cowboys in a lot of these movies. And so seeing somebody that looked very similar to me, I was like, oh, I can do this. I can go be like him. And so I really just hope that I can be that for also the next generation as they, start to watch a lot of the, films or TV that I head into. I just want people to be able to, see themselves in the work.
Can you tell me about your move from San Francisco to LA, like to pursue your dreams of acting? Were there any barriers or nerves that you faced and had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big one. It was called dropping out of college. Like that was a really big one for my family. My dad had been a school board president in the college, so he was like very much go to school, get your degree. And as a young black man, it makes sense why that is the way he wanted to sort of raise us, is once you have that degree, nobody could take it away from you. But I knew that acting was a passion that I've had since I was like 5 years old, and that was the only dream that I've ever had in my whole life. There was nothing else. There wasn't a second option for me. So I left school, moved back to San Francisco. I spent like 2 years auditioning in San Francisco and booking commercials here and there, but I had the reality of like nothing films in San Francisco. No movies, no TV shows film in San Francisco. So I was like, I gotta just move to LA and just give it a try. So I moved to LA and that was around 10 years ago. So I've been in LA 10 years now, and that's how long of grinding, small co-star roles and guest star roles and, a couple series regular, and now that's where I'm at.
How do your parents and your dad feel now? He's
Oh,
seeing
they're
you
they're
and
they're very happy now. They're all watching the show. They're enjoying it. And I got to have my dad come to set in New Orleans while we were filming this, so this was really nice. Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. Like they've been supportive the whole time, but obviously, anytime a child says, "I'm going to leave school and pursue the one thing that has the like smallest percentage of being successful," yeah, it made sense why they were cautious.
It must be nice though to introduce them to, your world now and the world of film and like to have your dad on set. Can I ask what you were studying in college
Political
beforehand?
science, minor in economics, and also military science because I did do ROTC in college. So I did join the Army program there for 2 years with the possibility of earning the scholarship. But once I realized that like I would have to serve for 6 years, I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna still stick with acting.
A bit of
So.
a foreshadow though, which is kind of interesting there.
Yeah, no, literally, because I didn't tell my family about it. And Nash didn't tell his family about joining the Marines in our show either. So yeah, it was a lot of parallel.
So one of those big projects that you were part of, series regular, which was First Kill, Netflix's Supernatural series, you starred as Apollo. Can you share what you gained and learned by being a series regular on that show?
Yeah, I feel like it was a perfect introduction into my world because I hadn't been a series regular at that point, and doing a job that was physical and also had VFX attached to it. You sort of got to understand all these different aspects of how to film these scenes. And, it was a lot of fun being on set with Imani Lewis and Philip Mullins Jr. and Sarah Catherine, who's now doing White Lotus, like all these actors who are now gone off to go do great things. It was such a building block for me as an actor, and I feel like Boots actually was also like boot camp for an actor because you have so many people a part of this show that you're truly in every single person's shot, and it was a whole lot different than First Kill. First Kill was inside of a studio, controlled environments. The scenes were really only with like 2 to 3 people. And then you get a show like this where you're in the outside environment in the sun, you're having to go through mud, you're having to jump over things, and there's like 10 guys that are all in these shots, and we have to be there for every single person's coverage. So, yeah, I feel like these last two jobs has been like a true growing experience for me as an actor.
I know you said before with First Kill, though, it was really cool for you to take Apollo and grow with him throughout a season. I guess same with Nash, and I know
Yeah.
with First Kill, there's a huge fandom. You had a lot of fan art being drawn for you as well, so it must have been cool to experience that for the first time.
Yeah, I think the fandom there was pretty crazy. It was huge. Like there's so many fans across the world. Like I've gone into random countries and have been, waved down and been like, "Hey, Apollo." So that's a pretty cool feeling when you're like, "Oh wow, this show reached, global scale." And, we hope that Boots does a similar thing.
I mean, not too shabby for series regular roles for you to both be like Netflix shows. So I'm glad that they got you back for Boots, which we will get into now. And I do want to give a spoiler warning for all those watching this interview. Please make sure you finish
Spoilers.
season one
Go watch
before
it.
continuing. Definitely watch it. Only 8 episodes, so you can watch it multiple times. What can you share about your audition process and what drew you to the project and the role of Nash?
I mean, the process auditioning was like 3 months long. It was, I think I sent the first self-tape in and I got pinned immediately after the first tape, which for people that don't know, it means like, hey, you are heavily in consideration for the role, but you don't have it yet. And maybe like 3 weeks later, I got a email saying, "Hey, we want you to hop on a call with the director for the first episode," which was Peter Hoare, who did The Last of Us episode 3, and he was really great. Um, and I had this audition where it truly felt like I was in an acting class because he was pushing me so hard in the audition that by the end of it, I felt like, am I a bad actor? Because like I feel like he's pushing me so hard. I don't know if I'm doing good or not. And then we had another director's callback. And then I had an in-person callback with the director and the showrunner and got to talk to them a little bit about, my family history with the Marines and why this job meant so much to me. And then I had two chemistry reads with Miles. And then I got the job. So overall, it was a very lengthy audition process. And I think rightfully so. I think this role was a very intense one and very pivotal for like the different arcs that were going on. Nash was sort of intertwined with a lot of different storylines.
When you were reading maybe the character description, like, do you remember what was on it and what maybe intrigued you about being able to develop this character more?
With Nash, there truly wasn't too much about him. It said that he was like this quiet, pensive character and sort of guarded and aloof. And so, really, the building of the character happened for me throughout the audition process with the director because he was sort of giving me these different notes. And I was like, interesting, I like that take on this. I'm probably going to bring that with me into the character if I get it. And then sort of just doing, some of my own thing because this character wasn't in the book that it's based off of, the Pink Marine. So I had a little bit more wiggle room than, some of the other guys who were going based off of a character from the book.
It's always nice to have that freedom, but it's also like a challenge for you, right? Because you're like, I don't have this source material guidance, but I'm sure there were people who kind of helped along the way in terms of Nash's story. How did you prepare for the role in pre-production after you were cast? Like, were you given any material or resources to study, even about the Marines? But I know you mentioned your family's past. I think it was Kieran who said in an interview that your grandfather
Yeah.
was a Marine, so you had that connection as well.
Yeah, so my little brother is a Marine. My grandfather and my great grandfather, two Purple Hearts in World War II. And so a lot of the things that I was bringing with me were truly trying to bring honor to those who came before me in real life who served. And that was really my only hesitancy about doing the show was like, my family are Marines. Are we going to be fully diving in the way I think that we should, or is it going to be, sort of a surface level Marines project? And I think that we did the best we could. They had us going through boot camp. They had military advisors on set training us. Um, I watched pretty much every military project that you can imagine, like from Jarhead and on. Like I watched every single one of them that exist. So that was sort of my preparation.
I mean, with a show like this, I know that you mentioned the military advisors, and not only with training, but I know that they were on set to make sure it was like an accurate depiction of what happened as well. So making sure the sets look good, set deck and everything like that. And I think you all, I mean, I'm not an expert at it, but I think you did a phenomenal job. I know that you all put a lot of your own kind of physical work into it as well. Like rarely you had stunt doubles. So you really went through the grueling training and you should be proud of yourselves.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't do any stunt doubles on this job. That's sort of my thing, but I'm sure there's gonna come a job where they're like, dude, you can't jump off that giant building. Um, but yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I decided to do a diet and workout plan because my little brother had told me that when he finished boot camp, he had lost a lot of weight, but he was like really shredded and kept the muscle on. And so I lost around 23 pounds, and had a very low body fat percentage by the end of the season. So it was gradual. And yeah, I tried to go as accurate as possible for this as I could.
Were you constantly checking in with your brother during this process?
Oh yeah, 100%. I would call him all the time and be like, "Hey, did this happen? Did this not happen? What were your feelings when you graduated, when they handed you your pin?" Like, and he was like, "I cried during that moment." So, getting like such close detail from somebody who had more recently been in the Marines, it was a benefit. I know we were in 1990, so things were a little bit different than, people going in accurately right now. Um, but it definitely helped a lot to be able to ask him questions when I needed.
Your own personal advisor. Good to have,
Yeah,
and I'm glad
really.
he could
Shout out,
provide.
shout out to my brother.
You want to shout out his name?
Dupre Goodman. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
So you mentioned the physical side. How else did you shape Nash with respect to like the key personality traits? What did you want to focus on when in character?
Um, I took in the guarded and aloof for the beginning. And it was a big character point that, he doesn't really want to be a part of the whole Marine family just yet. He's sort of like, I'm gonna go do my own thing. But I think when he notices some of the bullying going on, and he has aspirations of being in politics. It makes it hard for him to just sit back and, be quiet. So Nash went to Howard University, which is an all-black college, and I actually went to go visit Howard University with my dad, and I walked around the campus because I just wanted to see what it was like, for somebody to, be on that type of campus where everywhere they look, they see somebody who looks like them. And so I think Nash, knowing some of the different nuances of how people are treated in the world, gave him a little perspective when, developing a friendship with someone like Cameron Cope and how to maneuver some of the guys like Slovacek throughout the boot camp.
What's really interesting about that is, like you mentioned, life experience, time at school, and he mentions it, I think, a couple of times, but he says, I'm only in competition with myself. He's all about self-improvement, and that kind of shifts a little as the season goes on. So early on, you mentioned he develops a bit of a friendship, kinship with Cameron. They bunk beside each other. In your opinion, how did Nash view those early interactions and deeper conversations? And did it bother or affect Nash that Cameron exhibited some maybe more gay traits in his eyes, as we see with the diary?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that it bothered him at all. I think that he was more empathetic, if anything. And I think that he was just compassionate to him and building a friendship with him. When it comes to the journal, like I can't speak on what the writer's intentions were for the scenes because I didn't write it, but from my perspective, it may have not been the right words use. It was more, I guess, his observation of the platoon. And I don't know how early on he had wrote, those things about the whole platoon. But we see throughout all of episode 4 when the journal gets, revealed, how he's bonding with, Cameron, and, how he also goes to help him on the toilet paper run and all these different things. So I find it hard to believe that it bothered Nash. If anything, I think it just allowed him to see him for who he is and, try to still develop a friendship and bond with him. Obviously, it was unfortunate the way and the wording that was used in the journal. But yeah, no, I think that's probably one of my thoughts on if there is a season 2, getting that friendship back that they had throughout those first 4 episodes.
We definitely see the friendship and his relationship with the platoon kind of fracture and kind of come together a bit more at the end. But yeah, that was such an unfortunate scene. But I can imagine that maybe he was writing things early on. Like they did seem to be very like just like quick, like offhand comments that he was making in the journal. So we do uncover pieces of Nash's life as the season progresses, him being a college student, wanting to become the president of the United States and not having told his parents about joining the Marines. So were you told these personal facts at the start, or were you learning about him as you received scripts and as filming continued?
Yeah, no, I knew all of this probably in the in-person audition. My callback scenes were actually all of the scenes with McKinnon on the gun range, and the scenes with Santos. So I sort of knew up to episode 5 at least. And I also knew that spoiler warning, I also knew that he became Honor Man since that first meeting in person. They told me, like, hey, Nash becomes Honor Man. So I sort of knew I had room to play with some of the defiance with Nash in the very beginning. Like we see Nash sort of leaving his group behind on the obstacle course and different things like that. So that was purposeful how I was playing it because I was like, I need to have somewhere for him to go towards the end. So that was my intention with a lot of my choices.
He lied to his parents about his whereabouts, citing that they believe military is just another institution of oppression. What kind of relationship do you think he shared with them? And can you expand on his decision to lie and do this for himself, knowing that there could be danger involved?
Yeah, I think Nash's relationship with his parents are probably similar to the relationship with mine. Is, you're raised at a high level of excellence, which I truly was. Like my father was, I wouldn't say hard on me. I'd say he was very disciplined with me, and it allowed me to push myself to be great in everything that I did. It was the reason why I am the way I am, and just the way I wanted to leave school without really telling my parents, the same way Nash wanted to go do his own thing. You sort of feel like I can do this and I'm going to prove people wrong. And I think that's sort of what some of Nash carried into that.
Which was your favorite scene to be a part of and why?
Ooh, I have a couple, but off the top of my head, during the Crucible, we had a really fun night where we're crawling under the barbed wire and things are exploding. And honestly, for me, like I've been a fan of action films since I was a kid. So being able to do that, it was like just realizing in the moment, like, wow, you were doing the exact thing that you grew up admiring in all of these movies that you were watching. And so that was a really fun time. And then also the graduation scene. Like we were all finally in our nice clothes. Everybody looked good. We weren't beat up. And we were in this giant hangar and it just felt like Top Gun. It was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. That was one of my favorite days.
With the Crucible, and I mean, I'm sure controlled explosions, but how exactly was that filmed? Because that was like the only moment we kind of see them out in this, like,
Yeah.
simulated battlefield.
Well, we had shout out to the VFX team and the special effects team because they had real things, popping off by our heads. It was safe, but there were a lot of smoke canisters thrown, which, it was hard to breathe for a little bit. And we had this one day where we're just running through mud and it was like a full day of physical activity, but it was probably the most fun we all had because we were like, finally, we get to do something. It was like action oriented. It was a lot of fun.
And with graduation day, of course, I would say you would like the scene. You had like the nice dress blues on for the
Yeah,
Otter Man.
I did.
So a bit of like the VIP kind of treatment there. I was hoping you would also mention the food fight in the kitchen. What exactly
Oh
were you
no, that was
throwing
that
at
was
each
not
other?
that was not our favorite day. Trust me. I woke up the next day with mashed potatoes in my ear,
So you were
and
actually
that
throwing like
oh
actual.
yes, there was constant food just being found. I had a Q-tip and I thought I got it all out. The next morning I go back in and I'm like, that's a mashed carrot in my ear. It was very messy. And they were like mixing lard with some of the food, so it was a little bit more goopy. And it was like, yeah, it was quite the day. And showering was just it was gross. But
With Angus, like, I mean, he had like it
oh
still
yeah.
stuck all on his face for I think it was the scene where they had to return and visit the chaplain they were called to. But
Right.
yeah, that looked wild
And
that
so
that
with
scene.
that day, I think that might have been nastier than the food fight day because in the food fight, it's sort of all just getting thrown at you at once. But for the chaplain scene, we're all sitting there clean. We showed up to set clean, filmed it the next day, and they had to re-put food on her face. And so just imagine sitting there and they're just like throwing mashed potatoes in your face and they're like, "Yeah, that looks good. That looks accurate." I'm like, "You sure? You don't want to put a little bit more right here in my ear?"
You were like, I just got clean, and here we
Yeah.
are again. I mean, hopefully there's no more food fight scenes in the future, but
Hopefully.
it was funny for the camera. It was great for the camera.
It was a lot of fun.
How about your favorite training week activity to film?
Mm. I think learning how to climb the rope was a lot of fun. There is a technique with like twisting it with your feet, and I got really good at that. And then also the rifle training was a lot of fun because I got to have my little brother visit me on set that week, and we were doing this challenge where we had to see who could disassemble and reassemble the rifle the fastest. I won. But I also beat my brother, which was a lot of fun. And he was like, "Man, I don't remember any of this." But it was really cool to learn some of those things.
With the is it the confidence course? Was it the slide of life?
The
That
slap for
looked
life.
like
Yeah.
a crazy kind of
Yeah.
obstacle as well. Did your brother go through that?
Yeah, he went through all of that. We had really fun with the slide for life. We had harnesses on us, so we were safe. And then they CGI it out later. But it was so a lot of fun, going down the rope, and it was a fun experience.
Can you tell me about your scene opposite Miles in episode 3 where Nash shares his big dreams and fighting for change in his own way in the Marines? How did you prepare that dialogue and what emotions did you want to convey?
That scene was my audition scene, so I had been memorized for like 5 months by the time we had gotten to it. Um, but I think it was also our first, mine and Miles's first real scene, like where we got to just sit down. The cameras were set because the whole time it was like really quick, jumpy, running around, doing something action oriented. So it was nice to actually sit down and dive into some dialogue. And when it pertained to the Jesse Jackson comments in the monologue, I had talked to my dad about it, and that was somebody who inspired him growing up. And so a lot of it I took from my own father, and try to put it into Nash.
I think with like a scene like that, you said it was your audition scene, but it's one of those things where you also don't want to feel like it's so rehearsed coming in. So you kind of like have to pull from personal experience as well. And it was a very vulnerable scene, especially for Nash kind of letting his guard down a bit. And Cameron does convince him to write to his parents, which is a good outcome. So Nash also develops a season-long rivalry with Slovacek for the platoon's top dog or honor
Yeah.
man. Despite some setbacks, how was it for you to play opposite Kieran and your characters' clashing personalities?
I love Kieran. Kieran is my brother in real life. Like we call each other all the time. I know his sleeping schedule because he's in the UK, so I call him in the morning or really late at night. But it was just really fun to film with each other. We sort of knew early on that we wanted to do more than what was on the paper, and so we tried our best to give the writers some sort of glimpse of these guys can be close if you let them. And so we shot a lot. Not everything made it, but I think what we had, the moments, I think they sat with the audience a little bit. And by the end, seeing them head in head at the bar was like one of the best outcomes that I could think of.
I loved the scene where Nash urges Slovacek to try to talk to Cody after their
Yeah.
father, after the Bowman's father's passing. How was that to kind of play off of? And, the stares that they were giving each other from like across
Yeah.
the tents when
Oh
it
man.
didn't go according to or as well as Nash hoped it would go.
It actually turned out to be funnier than I thought it was going to be. Like when we were filming, we're just like, oh man, Marine stuff, bro. Go talk to him. His dad just died. And then we watched the scene and I was like, this is hilarious. Like these two guys, it has me very curious on if there were season two, where their relationship could go. I think that you have an enemies to brothers sort of thing going on with them.
The Oprah Winfrey comment was
Yeah.
very, very funny. So kudos to, I'm guessing it was the writers who kind of added that in there.
Yeah, yeah, it was the writers.
Nash might be impressed that, I mean, Slovacek knows who Oprah Winfrey is.
Yeah, right.
Tell me about Nash's diary and the fallout from your perspective, having to read the journal out loud. Because I imagine for you, in that room with all eyes on you and seeing the reaction that it's getting, it was a challenging, tough scene for you to film.
Yeah, that day was a long day because it was only that scene that day. So I had to film it for everybody's coverage every single time. And so one of the things that I take pride in is being able to just make sure I deliver every take, even if I'm off camera. I think delivering it for McKinnon when it's his coverage or delivering it for the other guys is just, I think it's something that you have to commit to as an actor because a lot of the times you think, oh, I'm off camera here, so I can kind of, go half. You can't, you got to really deliver it because these guys' scenes and story arcs also depend on it. And when it pertains to the actual contents of the journal, personally, I feel as though Nash is very calculated, very pensive, and sort of taking notes. Um, so when I was writing in the journal, I wrote every scene that you see Nash writing in the journal. I was really writing in those days, and I would sort of journal whatever the past few days have been, and I would journal it from Nash's perspective. And it also let me internalize a lot of how he was feeling, and I was able to actually go look back at like, oh, this is where he was at emotionally on this day, and this is where he's at emotionally now. And So from my perspective, I think he was a little bit more in detail. Like he's a college kid who's very educated and he's always looking around, taking notes. But obviously, for the purpose of the writing, they were like, we're gonna put a bunch of roasts in here and a bunch of jokes. So I think it's funny that like I was like thinking, oh, I'm writing something super deep, and then really I'm like, Hicks is demented, and but I think it was fun.
I mean, it was the plot point that, like you mentioned, moved
Right.
forward for some of the other characters' arcs. It kind of stems into like in episode five, Nash, he wants to unk himself. He feels ostracized by the platoon. He receives a negative letter from his mother that we don't get to see on camera what exactly was in it. Slovacek's place also tied to him. Why is Nash inspired to stay after that talk with McKinnon and regain the others' trust and respect?
I think that the whole thing Nash was chasing in his personal goals of being this leader and wanting to be president. I mean, how can you be president, but you don't even really truly understand the concept of being a leader and being there for each other, let alone the whole country? And so I think that during that conversation with McKinnon, I mean, it was so pivotal. I think that him seeing that set or McKinnon sees him for who he is and tells him you have so much potential and you're just throwing it all away, you're letting it go to waste. I think that may have clicked for him and some of the things he said about, you can keep being a little boy or you can be a man. And I think that all of it sort of clicked for him in that moment of if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go do it the right way, and I'm gonna try to be the best leader I can. And we see that a little bit with him coming to an understanding with Slovacek and also the rest of the platoon.
It definitely struck a chord with him internally, like, him saying, oh, you don't have the commitment or the resolve to really see things through. And so he decides, okay, I'm going to stay and I'm going to get this done, like, if anything, for myself. I liked a lot of the dialogue also between Nash and Santos after Ochoa's passing, discussing the treatment of recruits of color. Nash did remain more passive during much of the conversations, but he did have his own demons stemming from the journal.
Right.
Does Nash have strong feelings about this topic? Like, is it something he's aware of, or maybe has tried to turn a bit of a blind eye to in order to fit in?
Yeah, I don't think it was turning a blind eye to it. I think that Nash was front row of the Ochoa scene, his passing. And I think that, him seeing it really was the character's own doing. I'm not blaming it on him. Um, and I think also the fact that how it was sort of like that with everybody. I don't know. I think Nash was a little bit, more level-headed about it and able to see things from a even-keeled perspective where he's like, I'm only getting in here and I'm getting out. Like it's not that deep for him. But I do think that he recognized that Santos was hurt, and that's why they have that conversation and try to come to an understanding.
I really like how, these characters can come together though and try to like talk about it because it is something, again, in the 90s, they were saying like, oh, Black men could only, be part of the military, be part of the Marines for like X number of years. So it's something that's still new and something that they're still kind of learning to be around all these like white or Caucasian recruits.
Right.
So Nash is named Honor Man. His parents do attend graduation day. What did it mean to have them there, have McKinnon's support, and those subtle words of approval from his mother?
Yeah, I think it was just such a beautiful full circle moment when you see Nash in the beginning being the most distant recruit of all of them to now being the one who's sort of like stepping up to be a leader in a way. I just think that it's such a beautiful arc, and I was just so grateful that Nash had such a full story in one season that he was able to, go through all these different trials and tribulations and come out on the other side. And I hope that it could be inspiring for, like you said, young Black men, young Latino men to be able to see a character of color become the honor man and to be able to have both of his parents there and being supportive. I think that sort of positive message is important.
By the end of season one, how do you think Nash's personal definition of masculinity has changed, as well as his views on the Marines and their mission, if at all?
Yeah, I think there's just so many different forms of masculinity. I think that we see Nash open up many times, and that was something that I intentionally wanted to dive into when they had some of these emotional conversations. I wanted to make sure that I delivered the best I could because I know a lot of young men don't feel like opening up like that is a thing that's possible or it's a thing that should be done in this generation or even in the past generations. And so I think it was really important to put that at the forefront. And so I really wanted to focus on that in those scenes. And, I think by the end, you see he's openly having these different conversations with people, which used to happen maybe only in private with Cameron Cope, then happened with Santos, happened for a couple of moments when he's apologizing to his whole platoon. And I think that's what true growth is being able to recognize, okay, I was wrong and, I apologize. And I think that a lot of young men can take that with them.
Definitely. I love him taking responsibility. At first it's like they didn't want to hear him, but it was genuine, the place where he was coming from when he said that he'd be happy to serve alongside the others. Season one does end on a bit of a somber note with the first Persian Gulf War on the horizon, and Nash was preoccupied at the bar. But how do you think he'd react to the new developments and possible deployment to Saudi Arabia, given the fact that he said earlier, he had plans to return to
Oh, back to
school?
college. Yeah. I think that'd be a real shocker. I think that when they're graduating, they're all very proud that they did it, but I don't think they actually have any sort of perspective on what that really means for them now. His intentions were, like you said, to go back to Howard University, continue in school, and now I have no idea how any of them are going to be. Like, what are these characters like if they have to potentially go to Desert Storm? It's going to be very interesting to see, if that storyline comes to fruition.
Do a lot of the cast like talk about what could happen in future seasons? Like, do you talk amongst yourself? Is anyone trying to get anything out of like the showrunners or Greg Cope White like
You
during
know,
filming?
I think that during filming, maybe we were like interested in it, but we sort of were like, you know what? Let's focus on delivering season one first and knocking it out of the park. Because I think now it's just more pressure of like, okay, can you go and do it as good or better? So if we go back, we're just gonna have to make sure we bring it.
You filmed in a defunct naval base, which stood in as the training facility on Paris Island. How were the sets and environment for you? Like, is there anything specific that stood out, and how did it like really add to the weight of the narrative?
Yeah, I just have to give a shout out to the whole production team because they built that giant gun range in the back of the studio. And so we were able to watch it go from this empty swamp into a giant, long filled gun range. We watched them build the obstacle course, the confidence course. We, me and Miles, I remember this memory specifically. On our first days, we arrived to set, which is only a couple days after we had just finished our chemistry read. We walked in and we seen the whole squad bay built, and we were like, "Oh wow, this job has been worked on before we were ever even a part of the process." So now coming into it and seeing this giant thing already built, it was like, okay, we're doing this, and yeah, it was really exciting.
As a viewer, there's a lot of screaming by the sergeants. I'm sure some of it's done in post with amplifying the voices, but how loud was it really?
No, that was not done in post. That those men were yelling every single day in our ears, in our faces. We got a lot of spit. It was a lot of fun. I think the funniest part was seeing Nicholas, who played Howitt, just go ahead and improv left and right. It was so funny.
So it's Nicholas, Max, and Cedric in your faces all the time. Very intense. It's funny because I spoke with a co-star, Blake, and he didn't say that you needed like hearing protection, but I don't know if it just felt a bit louder to you because it was, I mean, I thought it seemed very loud.
Yeah. Honestly, I just soaked it in. It was to me, it was a part of the experience and it was a lot of fun being able to, have these guys commit so hard. I just truly think every single person showed up for their roles. You had the DIs who took it very seriously and it can't work without them. If they're not believable, then the different things that the recruits are going through aren't really believable. And I know when you look at videos of the Marines, these, howling sergeants and drill instructors, it's a very important part of when you watch these videos. So I'm glad that they nailed it. I couldn't do it. I would lose my voice.
It was a team effort all
Yeah.
around. How was your experience working with the crew and creative team, in particular, Greg Cope White, as well as your showrunners, Andy and Jennifer, and their vision for the show?
I mean, the crew is amazing. First off, like the extras who were a part of our show, they are the core group of guys that you see in the platoon that are not, the series regulars or guest stars, but they did every single thing that we did, the same amount of effort that we put in, they were also putting in. So kudos to all of those guys and to, the production team and, the PAs and everybody who was just working on our crew because it was really hot. Like we were working long days in New Orleans heat, sometimes 114-degree weather and, seeing everybody commit to creating something special was really nice. Um, Greg is amazing, a good friend. I love him. He's so nice and always a ear to listen when I had questions for him, had questions about Nash, or I had ideas for improving and wanted to get it approved by him. And same with Andy. They were all just very giving. If you ever had anything you really needed, you could sort of just go straight to them in person, text, call. So I'm very appreciative of, the whole team.
Can you tell me about the cast relationship and how you bonded together in New Orleans? Do you have any favorite memories from behind the scenes that you can share?
I think just like this whole experience, like I look back now and just think how grateful I am to be able to just form a true brotherhood. Like, a lot of the times you can work on a project and when you wrap, you may never talk to these people again. You may not see them unless it's press related, but we talk to each other every single day, whether it's in the group chat or on the phone. We just truly have so much love and respect for each other. And I think when you're bonded through an experience like this show, which was putting us through real boot camp, real elements, you get what the whole purpose of the show is. It's like the brotherhood. That's what the Marines are about. It's about forming the brotherhood. And so the fact that we were able to do that on the set makes me happy because I hope it gives the viewers sort of like true experience of what would happen if they were to go join boot camp.
And you were just in New York recently for Boots Camp to kind of like help promote the show a bit. How was that to reunite with not all, but like a handful of the cast as well and
Yeah.
get to celebrate that together with some people who you were introducing the show to for the first time?
Oh, it was so fun. It was just good to be able to finally talk about the show because we've been working on this for 2 years and now it's finally coming out or it's out now. And, being able to just go to New York and just celebrate it with the guys, it was a lot of fun.
Now, if you had to choose a favorite character in Boots other than your own, who would it be and why is it John Bowman?
I know that question probably came from Blake, but I'm gonna say Hicks. I think Hicks is a menace, and I love Angus, and we just have such a great bond and friendship. So I think I would be Hicks. I'd be causing a little mischief in the barracks.
His character is so funny with the snake and with everything. But I mean, where's the love for John Bowman?
I love John Bowman. Justice for John Bowman falling off that rope. But yeah,
Were you there when he had to do kind of the rope stunt. I know he didn't fall,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no, I was there for every scene that all of us were filming together, except the flashback scenes, because those were sort of isolated to those characters.
it must have been interesting for you to kind of get such a full picture then of the set because like you mentioned, like with all the group scenes really in training, like you were in every single shot, even if you weren't at the forefront.
Right. Yeah. It was tiring. But that's just the commitment that you have to give on a project like this. And I think it was all worth it because, you're seeing right now as people are enjoying it and we have a lot of people reaching out saying how accurate it was to their boot camp experience. So it makes me really happy to know that the commitment, the effort, the long nights that we stayed up putting into the show, it paid off.
Well, I'm so happy for you and the whole team that put this together. Really hoping for a second season for you all so you can return. But I have one more question for you, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Well, I wouldn't be an ice cream. I would be a gelato. I think I like coconut gelato a lot. Yeah, I enjoy it. I like the coconut flakes. I watch a lot of Survivor and they're always eating coconut. And so maybe there's something, in there with that, but coconut.
I like the tropical influence. You're like, I watch too much Survivor. I really
Yeah.
need to get out to the beach and the island.
Yeah, of
That's great. Well, thank you so, so much, Dominic, for taking the time to chat. I really appreciate it.
course. Thank you guys so much. Go enjoy Boots.
Yes, make sure to watch Dominic as Nash and Boots. Season one is out on Netflix. Please support the show and the cast so they can get a second season. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.